Well, we'd like to welcome everybody today. This is not the Masonian podcast. This is what we're calling the Darkness to Light series. It's just a sit-down interview with our good friend, Jason Marshall, who comes to us from Oklahoma. He lives in the town of Norman, Oklahoma, which is kind of a, best I can tell, pretty close to Oklahoma City, kind of a suburb almost, or next door to it, city of tornadoes, the tornado land out here. He blew in here the other day on a strong wind, and he's come to North Carolina for Sophia Lodge. He's going to do a program for us today, and we are looking forward to that. But we've fallen into this pattern of every time we bring in a national level speaker, Jason, we hijack them over here, and we capture them, and we keep them over here in Troy, down in the country where they can't get away, and we strong arm them into doing a sit-down interview with us. So we appreciate you doing that, and we're glad to have you here, brother.
Yep, glad to be here, and captive audience. I can't walk out on this interview. That's
right, can't get away. So there's a couple of things that make Jason really special. I think the main thing is that he is a fabulous writer. The way that I got to know Jason was through his writing first. You started with a blog. Was that first? Was that before the book or after the book?
I had a personal blog that was before the book, and then I wrote a book, and after I joined the fraternity, I started writing for Living Stones. Yeah. And I think that's where you probably found me first.
Yeah, Living Stones, we all know them. If anybody does not subscribe to Living Stones or doesn't know what it is, it's a national magazine. We had Rob Hurd here the other day talking about it extensively, but it's a really great magazine, and if you're serious about your Freemasonry, then you need to subscribe to that. You can find it with an easy Google search. The first writings that I came across of Jason's, though, were you were doing this series of like weekly meditation on the alphabet. That you did A and then B and then C, and each one would correspond to some sort of a thing that you should dwell on. It was weekly or monthly.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah, that was on my personal blog. I haven't really updated it in a long time. It's called the Living in the Now blog, and yeah, that's basically what I did. Is I went A to Z, and it would have a topic to meditate on for that week corresponding with that letter, like A for attitude. B for brotherhood for the fraternity, right. C for character, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I stumbled across that. I think that was the first writings of yours that I actually stumbled across, and I really enjoyed that a lot. And so, like, with any good author that you run across, then you start looking for all their other stuff, right? And I just kept finding things that Jason had written, and all of them are good. Not only are you an excellent writer, your sentences just flow well, and it's just easy to read. Rob and Melanie told me that they never have to edit anything of yours. It always comes in just pristine and perfect. But then, I came across the book, and we're going to talk about all of this a little bit later. But if you get an opportunity to read any of Jason's stuff, or let me rephrase that, make an opportunity to read Jason's stuff because it's really good. He's a good thinker. He's young. He's only 33 years old. So he's going to be kicking around Masonry for a long time, and he's just one of the guys that's going to be a huge influence on the craft. I can just feel it, Jason.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome, buddy. Jason's a past master of Veritas Lodge. Veritas is one of the 3 traditional observance lodges in Oklahoma. And, I can't say enough about the TO model and what an inspiration that the lodges before our TO model came, before the TO model came to North Carolina. Can't say enough about how much y'all influenced us and how much we appreciate it. So let's talk about how you got started. Before you even got into Masonry, we were talking yesterday that you had an experience in college. Why don't you share it with us?
I've always been kind of a philosophical person. Even as a child, I used to drive my youth pastors crazy because I was the kid in Sunday school that, well, why? Well, because we said so. Well, it doesn't work. Why? And when I went to college, I kind of thought for a while that maybe I wanted to be some kind of maybe be a youth pastor or something like that. I was always interested in religion, and I started taking a lot of comparative religion courses. And one of the professors at my college that I went to at University of Central Oklahoma was Professor Greg Scott. Dr. Greg Scott. And he was the kind of professor that when you'd mention his name, that other students and faculty kind of went, ugh. I mean, because he was a very intense personality. And so I took one of his courses, really liked it, and I decided to take a 2-semester course that he had. Excuse me. Here, my allergies are getting up here in North Carolina. And basically the course, you would read the writings from some of the major religions of the world. You'd read the Quran, the Old Testament, New Testament, Bhagavad Gita, Lotus Sutra.
All of it?
Yeah. Analects of Confucius. And you better read it because you show up to class and he would absolutely grill you. So if you kind of skipped a couple pages, he would find out. He'd pick the holes in your story. Well, at the end of the course, you had to write your own personal philosophy. And had to be 8 to 10 pages. Or maybe it was more than that, maybe 10 to 15, I can't remember. And on your own personal philosophy. And I started writing it from a very fundamentalist Christian background on why all these other people were completely wrong. And this was not too long after 9/11, so especially the Muslims got the brunt of my ire. And I could never finish it though. At the time in undergrad, I was working at a 7-Eleven and going to school. And so, while I was stocking beer in the cooler, I'd kind of write down notes to work on homework and whatnot. But I could never finish this paper. I'd get about a page in on why everybody's wrong, but just could not finish it. And I remember the day that it was actually due, it was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm still trying to give it the college try and bust this thing out. And I just kind of had a breakdown on, you're wrong. You're looking at this so myopic and from one point of view, and you're out trying to tell everybody else that they're wrong. Maybe you're wrong. And that was a real breakthrough for me. And I can remember the next day, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, I went to go talk to Dr. Scott and, trembling with fear because he was a very intense personality, that, hey, I can't finish this paper. And he said, well, it's due at noon. You've got 3 hours. And then I told him why, that, this whole course, I've been reading all of these world religions from a point of view that everybody's wrong and only my personal flavor of Christianity is right. And he just kind of smiled and said, well, I'll give you an extra 2 weeks. And, he basically thanked me for actually doing what the course was intended to do, which is kind of break down your preconceived notions. So turned it in late, got an A, and actually really had a mentor from then on out when I was in college.
Do you still stay in contact with him?
I have. Probably the past couple of years, I've kind of fallen off. He's kind of gone soft retired, I guess. But and in fact, Brother Bob Davis and some other ones, for a while, we were trying to see if he'd be interested in the fraternity, but I'm not quite sure he was interested in getting tied down to the fraternity, I guess.
So how did your paper turn out, the one that you wrote 2 weeks later?
I got an A. And
what was the main theme, or how did you approach it?
Well, that really started kind of what turned into my book. Instead of thinking of it as everybody's wrong, I started looking at how everybody's maybe right. So that everybody always immediately wants to look at what's the differences. You have the us versus them mentality. What makes you different from me? And that's kind of seems to be the baseline that everybody always wants to go to, that we try to differentiate ourselves. Where on the paper it is, look, we have a lot more in common than we have different. And if you focus on what we have in common, there's way more. And in fact, the crux of the religions, charity, love for your fellow man, peace, harmony, that is common themes in every religion. And also later on when I joined the fraternity, that's certainly, the central tenets of Freemasonry.
Well, wouldn't the world just be a better place if everybody practiced that instead of just talking about it?
Oh, absolutely. And, there's a difference between, knowing the path and walking the path. And I think sometimes people, they talk about love and love for yourself, love for your fellow man, respect and charity. But usually when it comes to actually, putting your feet on the pavement and walking the walk, it doesn't translate.
I love the quote from Morpheus.
Yes.
Okay, so let's continue down this path a little bit because I want to talk about this. So a lot of people grow up in their religion, whatever it is. And that's what they believe, as because that's what they've been taught the whole time, right?
Yeah.
It's what your parents teach you, and you go to your church or synagogue or mosque or wherever you live. So that's what you believe. But we talk a lot about enlightenment, in Freemasonry. Boy, this is a dangerous path I'm fixing to go down, Jason, but I'm going to do it.
All right.
If this falls apart and the wheels run off of this thing, maybe they'll burn us quick instead of slow roasting us. How about that?
There we go.
So my experience has been, and the things that I've both experienced personally and read about, is that true enlightenment makes you question who you are, your relationship with your God, and all of the things that you believe. All of the things that you believe, both religious things that you believe and things about science and history and pretty much everything that society has told us. You're supposed to question that. As you get to know yourself and you get to understand the nature of God, then you really, if you're really serious about that, then you dig deep. And as you start digging deeper and deeper, you get to some uncomfortable places. Help me out here, and you see where I'm going, and we'll just keep down. Let's start about that first, about the learning process and the pain that comes with that as you get down towards the bottom.
Yeah, the whole journey of the journey of enlightenment, I like to refer to as more of a journey of transformation. And questioning everything is absolutely essential, because as long as you stay in your comfortable bubble of the world that you've grown up in, you will never change. You will never transform. You're going to stay in that comfortable rut. And by going and question everything, question your thoughts, beliefs, and when you have a thought or opinion, well, why do I have that thought and opinion? And just break it down. That can become very uncomfortable, because it might bring up a lot of prejudices and underlying notions you might not have thought of. And it also kind of leads you down various other rabbit holes. And it changes you in such a way, too, that sometimes your old friends, your family, your coworkers kind of do well, man, you've changed. Now you don't want to hang out, and we can't tell racist jokes or sexist jokes, and we used to be the exact same line of thinking. And
you used to be one of us.
Exactly. Now you're not. Who are you? And then of course then they try to pigeonhole you. Well, now you're some crazy liberal, or now you're some crazy conservative. Well, not really. I'm me, and that can be very uncomfortable. I know in my own journey, when I started really questioning my foundational religious beliefs, that is very, very uncomfortable. If you've grown up your entire life having a certain set of religious and dogmatic beliefs, and then all of a sudden you're taking a step back and really breaking those down and questioning those. And, and one of the refrains I heard over and over again is, don't question your faith. Don't question your faith. Well, I have to. There's a certain amount of faith that, you have to have for belief, but I need to know why. Why, if there is something that I believe, there's certain things you can't prove. Jim Tresner, one of his famous talks is always, there's a difference between truth and fact, where, truth means something that has a powerful, almost transcendent value to it. I can say, I love my wife, and that is absolutely true, but even though there might be quizzes on Facebook that say so, there's no way to measure how much I love my wife. I know on a personal level that I love my wife, and I hope that I do a good enough job that telling her that and showing her that she believes it. But that's a truth. You can't measure that. Now, fact would be something like the temperature outside. I can say it's 97 degrees and 100% humidity, which I think it is here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And we can go out, we can get a thermometer and a hygrometer, and we can prove it that is 100% humidity. It's 97 degrees. So, trying to make that distinction requires you to really dig down and why. If I say I love my wife, well, why? What's the basis for that? And, if I say that I believe in a certain set of beliefs or religious dogmatic, why? Do I believe it just because somebody told me? Or do I have some kind of, personal connection, personal experience with it, or background that I can say that's a good foundation to start off on? So
as you start questioning everything, at some point you start to hit a real low point. And for me, everybody has a different experience, right? Some people have a great epiphany, and they see this, St. Paul on the road to Damascus, or it's St. Teresa, or, but for me, my epiphanies come slowly over time. And, I'm thinking about something and thinking about something and thinking about something and saying, I'm not sure what I believe, and I'm not sure what I believe. I can't really not believe this thing I've been taught all my life. And eventually you just kind of come to a point where, damn it, I don't believe this thing that I've been told my whole life. And it's a hard place to be. It is.
And, it's funny that I actually had this conversation with my mother about a week ago when it came to some of my religious beliefs. And, I said, I haven't come to where I am now easy. It's been very difficult. Lots of long nights, wrestling with it, wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and just mulling it over and over and over and over again. And, what's easy? I mean, the easy path is just to take what you've been taught and what your friends and your coworkers and your family believe and stay there. That's easy. That's comfortable. You're one of us. Nobody's going to question it. You're a good guy at that point. But as soon as you start really questioning it, you become Galileo or Copernicus, and you're this crazy guy who's trying to say the world's not what we all believe the world is. You're poking holes in that veil.
Or God forbid, Bruno.
Absolutely. So that is extremely difficult, and and it takes a certain amount of real bravery on the part of the
searcher.
Yeah.
Of you.
That's right.
It's a journey, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, we talked about this yesterday on the way home from the airport. And for me, when I began to really question the things that I had always been taught, when I decided that some of those things were not factually correct, back to your facts and truths, then I kind of went through a phase, a real low point in my spirituality, in my philosophy, where I thought that if it's not true, then it can't be right. Does that make sense? If part of it's not true, then it has to all be a big lie. And that was a hard time for me to go through, and I really distanced myself from my religion. But as you start to climb back up the other side, I came back to it. I was able to come back to it with a entirely new perspective. It was like I had been given a new life. It was like I had, perceived the world in an entirely different place, and my spirituality and my religion. So I was able to come back to it almost from a different angle, and this is a big step on the path to enlightenment. This is, going through. I was going to let you talk about the dark night of the soul, but that's kind of what they call that low point that you get to. And then, as the hero journeys on, then you come to new truths. And we know this theme from Freemasonry, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Fleshed out.
Well, just kind of picking it up, if it's not factually true, then it's false. And again, that goes back to the true and false. I think when you start questioning it, it's easy to go down that road that says, look, if factually these certain things did not happen or it doesn't line up with what we can prove, then the whole thing's wrong, it's false, walk away. But I think by really examining it yourself and your own beliefs, that's when you start focusing on the truths of it, of the love, the acceptance, and more of the what in Freemasonry we call the allegory or the symbolism, and that is kind of where the little nuggets of truth are. And I think one of the huge steps on it we talked about yesterday is finding, especially in Freemasonry, mentors and brothers that will help you on your path. That cannot be, talked about enough, because that's essential to find somebody who's also been on that path that will kind of talk you off the ledge or just give you some advice and help you on that. But, the dark night of the soul, it is dark, and on the hero's journey on Campbell, one of the things that he talks about is that, myth in religions, or just mythical. Campbell had a funny saying that when we talk about myth, that's always somebody else's religion.
Yeah.
Whenever you talk about your own religion, that's not myth, that's truth.
Right.
Somebody else's religion, that's myth. Well, the purpose of religion or myth is, one, for societal expectations to tell you how the world works, and also to help you journey through your transition through life, through youth, manhood, old age, which is entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason in the Masonic system. But modern man has a hard time with religion and myth religion has a hard time because we can scientifically disprove a lot of stuff.
Right.
And, I'm not bashing Christianity here or Judaism at all, but you can scientifically prove that Genesis, as far as in 6 days and the order of creation, is false. You can absolutely prove it. That the animals could not have came before plants. What would they have eaten? And you look at the fossil record, you can tell that plants and simple life started, and then later the flora and fauna. And if you take it literally, you have a whole lot of people who are walking away from the religion. If you look at church attendance and just religious attitudes, we are walking away from religion largely. And it really takes you breaking that down and saying, look, I can still be a spiritual person, or I can still even be in this religion, but I'm going to do it on my own terms. And the path of transformation, it's a unique path. Campbell told the story about King Arthur, that the knights were around the round table, and the Grail showed itself, and so and then it kind of went off into a dark forest. Well, the knights said, "Hey, we're going to go on an adventure, and we're going to find this Grail." Well, they all went into the forest at their own point. They didn't go in together as a group. They went in on their own point, to where it was the darkest and scariest for each member. Because, as Campbell says, if you're on a well-worn path, that's not the right path. That's somebody else's path.
Right. Love it. So, we're talking about what we're talking about here is don't confuse the thing symbolized with the symbol. Is one of the mantras you hear all the time. Freemasonry tells you right up front, boom, we're veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. And if the other philosophical systems of the world would hit that a little bit harder, I think it would reach, I don't know, I guess some people like the way that it's portrayed as truth, factual truth. Mm-hmm. But I think that they leave a lot of people out by being pigeonholed into that dogma. They'd be better off if they said, look, some of this may not be factually true, it's more allegorical. Jesus always said, let me tell you a parable. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you an allegory. He talked about it all the time. He talked in parables and allegories. Yeah,
and his disciples also said, why do you do that? And he said, some people are not ready. Milk for babes and pearls before swine. That's the reason behind it. And I think all of the major religions, if you look at them, they have the more esoteric, the more public side. And then they also usually had a mystery side to it that went deeper. And I think, the public, by and large, they're happy with the fairy tale side of things, that you can just believe whole hog, you don't have to think about it, it's a nice story, it makes me feel better, and that's it. But then there's those who are true seekers that say, look, I need to go deeper than that. That doesn't work for me. I don't want to know that the stork brings the baby. I want to know really what happens.
Exactly. So these circles within circles, or these these groups within groups, we take it as second nature because we read a lot and we have experienced a lot, and we're deep. We think about it a lot, but there are so many people out there that just don't even understand that that's a possibility. So we talk about in Freemasonry, we talk about people being disillusioned at their local lodge level. And we're going to go here in just a minute. This is how the TO movement got started, though. People were not liking what they were finding in their normal lodges. But then they found this other model that kind of works for them. If the religions, great religions of the world kind of would, I don't guess you do want to put that out there right in front of everybody. Hey, there's a deeper path. But if they were a little more open about, not calling those people heretics, then I think that they would retain more people.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And going to the fraternity, I think that's the whole reason that some of the TO models are really taking off for any successful lodge. You don't have to be a TO lodge to be successful, but you have to provide something of meaning for these people. And Robert Putnam, wrote a book called Bowling Alone. He was a sociologist who talked about social capital. Well, social capital is a two-way street. Basically, that works just like a bank or anything else where you put something in and you get something back out of it. So if I'm going to show up to lodge night in and night out, and I'm basically saying at that point, what I'm doing tonight is more important and more valuable than anything else. It's more valuable for this instant than being with my family, my kids, work, relaxation time. That's a lot that you're putting in, but that's what you're saying every time you go to a meeting, that this right here is more important and more valuable than anything else that I can be doing right now. In order for you to put that kind of time and effort into it, you need to get something else equally of value back. So if I'm saying no to my wife, no to my kids, no to my free time, and all we're doing, and I don't want to beat this dead horse, is talking about bills and griping at each other, drinking burnt coffee and lasagna, that's not anything. You're not getting anything back out of it. And that's why you see people who may be really active for a couple of years, and then you know what? They start saying, well, I'd rather spend time with my family. I'd rather go hang out with my buddies at the pub. This is not meaningful to me. So you have to provide something that engages those members, whether it's a social lodge and there's some kind of a social aspect behind it, or it's more of an esoteric or philosophical lodge where you can go and explore some of the deeper mysteries, which is what most of the TO lodges are for.
Right. So every TO Mason has this exact same story. Very few were actually raised in a TO lodge. I would say 95% of them, probably in the United States, were in some other lodge. They became disillusioned. You have the same story. Why don't you share it with us?
Yeah, I the lodge that I joined, there just wasn't much there. At the time that I joined, I was actually in law school, and I had already kind of been on my own personal path of transformation. I had wanted to join the fraternity for quite some time. I'd always had an interest in it. Both of my grandparents, both of my grandfathers were Masons and active. And so it's something that I always knew was out there. I didn't really know what it was about other than they were Freemasons. And my mom has reminded me of it, and I can remember vividly the Tulsa Scottish Rite. I grew up north of Tulsa, Oklahoma. They used to have a building that had this giant double-headed eagle on the side. And I don't know how big it was, but as a young kid, it looked like it was 100 feet tall. And I can always remember telling my mom, that's my building. I had no earthly idea what the Scottish Rite was, what the eagle was, or anything. And my mom was kind of like, oh, yeah. Well, now, of course, the Scottish Rite's a huge part of my life. But anyway, when I joined finally, and I had actually asked to join several times. The 7-Eleven I worked at was fairly close to Masonic Lodge, so the guys would come in with their square and compass polos or baseball hats, and I'd talk to them. Hey, what is it? And I could never get a straight answer. Oh, well, it's a fraternity. Fraternity of what? Well, it's a brotherhood. Brotherhood of what? Well, we can't talk about it, which is the ultimate cop-out if you don't know or you can't describe it. Yeah. So, 3 or 4 years after that's when I actually joined, and there just wasn't much there. I mean, we had a really good group of young guys who were energetic, but the actual lodge meetings, it was burnt coffee and lasagna, and we'd gripe about bills, close up shop as quickly as possible. So the best times, and again, every TO Mason has a story, but the best times were before lodge in the parking lot, or after lodge in the parking lot, or at the local pub. And that was it. Those were the best times for the meetings. In fact, that started being the reason to go to meeting was, well, let's, hurry up and get through this so we can go to the pub. And I joined the Scottish Rite and got to meet, one of my big mentors and influences, Robert Davis.
This is at Guthrie.
In Guthrie, Oklahoma. And while we were there were a whole bunch of other young Masons that were also from Oklahoma City Metro lodges. Well, we got to know each other, really liked each other, and it's the conversations, slowly started happening on, well, Lodge stinks. I mean, so now Scottish Rite's it. The Blue Lodge, just forget it. The Scottish Rite's where it at. And honestly, if Veritas wouldn't have started, that's probably what I would have done. I'd probably be a very active Scottish Rite Mason, and I'd probably never be a Blue Lodge. I mean, that's just the facts of it. And so you started having this cycle where we go to reunions, become energized, get to be with each other, and then you go back to your Blue Lodge, slog through for 6 months. Why am I doing this? And then you go back to the Scottish Rite. Okay, this is so great. This is so great. And then finally somebody had the bright idea. Well, let's just start our own lodge. And of course, being young, I want to say our average age was probably 27 or 28. We said, yeah, let's do it. not really realizing the process and some of the political intrigue that it was going to take. But that's what we did.
Wonderful story, and it's the same story told over and over. I can't wait to come to Veritas sometime. I hope I get to come visit.
Absolutely.
I'll fly in on a tornado or something. Okay, so let's talk about the blog. This is and the book and the podcast. We kind of hit the blog already. You still have the blog up? Tell us what your blog is all about. The Laudable Pursuit.
The Laudable Pursuit blog is one I started about a year and a half ago, and it was a long time in the making. I have always been into more of the transformational aspects of the fraternity, and there's been lots of other Masonic blogs, but most of those are either historical or kind of the issues of the day. And my interest is in the transformational aspects, and Living Stones magazine really focuses on some of the transformational aspects of the fraternity, but it's once a month magazine. So I decided to look, I really like something that you could have a blog that really focuses on that. And so that's kind of where the idea came from, was to get guys from all over the country and focus on transformational masonry, but within a blog context.
How do we find it? It
is thelaudablepursuit.com.
Okay.
And we also have a Facebook page. Again, just search for The Laudable Pursuit.
And so the blog kind of parlayed into a podcast.
Yes.
Tell us about the podcast.
The podcast is, right now in its current iteration, is Matt Anthony and Nate Warren. They're both members of Veritas. Matt Anthony is the past master. He was the past master just before me. So he'd be the past master in 2013. And he's our tech guy, tech guru. I mean, he does an amazing job on the website, the audio production end, on the podcast, and Nate's kind of our moderator. And that's what we want to focus on, is the transformational aspects. Kind of edgy, get outside of the box instead of just, again, rehashing the problems of the day or what the party line is for the Scottish Rite or Blue Lodge or the Grand Lodge, and really just talk about our own personal journeys. Right now, really, it's just us. Primarily us three, but we do have plans to try to expand that out to other people in the future.
Cool. You can find it on iTunes?
Yes, you can find it on iTunes. Again, thelaudablepursuit.com also has a podcast header that you can click on, and it has a show episode list as well. It's on iTunes, Stitcher. Matt, our tech guy, pretty much I think has it anywhere you can find a podcast. He's done it. That's his purview, but I'm pretty sure you can find it.
Good. It's really good. Everybody that's watching, if you haven't heard it, please go do it. You can, just like ours, you can download it on a flash drive, put it in your car, and listen to it going down the road.
That's right.
There you go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the book. We already know how you started to write the book. You were telling us about your college experience, and that was the very beginning, the genesis of it. What made you decide to flesh it out? How did you do that? And where can we find it?
Well, the book was kind of an accidental book. As I started going down the path of religious transformation for me, again, as you said, you kind of go on this arc of, well, it's all bunk and it's not worth anything, to, well, there is truth here. And so I started rereading all of the religious books. I started talking to religious teachers and just trying to understand. Especially, again, this isn't too far from 9/11. So I really started reaching out to some of the clerics and Islamic leaders, reading the Quran, and I want to understand this. I mean, I think that's a false narrative that every Muslim is out to kill you. They're all extremists. They're not. I mean, that's impossible. And so I really started learning that. Well, then I kind of had my own personal notes, and then I started studying Judaism and kind of Christianity from a new perspective, and Hinduism and Buddhism. And so I had these notes, and once I actually joined the fraternity, my original lodge, you'd have quite a few off-colored jokes and whatnot, unfortunately, before lodge. And I started taking some of these guys to task, and I said, well, you just said this joke. What's your basis for it? Oh, it's just a joke. Well, maybe, but why are you saying it, and why do you think it's funny? Do you know anything about Islam? Do you know anything about Buddhism? Well, no, I don't need to. Well, yeah, you do. You're expressing an opinion. You might think it's funny or humorous, but you're expressing an opinion. What's your basis for it? So I kind of fleshed out some of my notes into more of a readable form, and I started giving these people. Well, of course, some of the people said, well, that's stupid, or they just hand it back or never hand it back. Well, then, but there were quite a few people who said, thank you. That I really appreciate that. I didn't know this. Yes, that's similar to what I believe anyway. And it was actually Bob Davis who, I talked to him at the Scottish Rite, and he said, that'd be a good book, actually, to have something very easily digestible, easy to read. Here's the basis, and here's what we all have in common. And so just over the next 3 or 4 years, just started fleshing that out into the book form.
How can we find it?
The book is called The Path. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Probably the easiest way would be in the search bar, just type in my name, Jason E. Marshall. Should be the first one that pops up. You can search for The Path, but that's a pretty common name, so there's several books. But it's and you could even if you Google me, I'm pretty sure if you Google Jason E. Marshall, it's one of the first couple of hits. Will be a link to it somewhere. Cool.
It's very good. I enjoyed it very much. I've read it twice now.
Oh, thank you.
And I appreciate you writing it. I just think it's short. I mean, it's not morals and dogmas, so it's an easy read. Your sentences flow so good. It's just so easy to read your stuff. The information is really good. It's kind of a mini comparative religion synopsis, isn't it?
Well, thank you. That was actually kind of a struggle, because when I actually decided, well, I'm going to write this in a book form, it really started out as very, very scholarly. And my wife, she's always my first editor, and she said, this is really good, but nobody's going to read it. That this is over everybody's head. I'm interested in it, and I still am having trouble with it. So that was kind of one of the things I really tried to do, was very digestible, very readable. I'm not trying to give you an entire historical synopsis and dogmatic synopsis. It's here's the main beliefs, here's how everything kind of ties together. So that was the goal of the book. So thank you.
Cool deal. Everybody go buy it. So you've mentioned Bob Davis a couple of times, and I don't know if we talked about Jim Tressner yet, but let's just talk about those guys. They're kind of also, they're well-established heroes to Masonry in the United States. They're both real treasures as far as I'm concerned. I love both of their writings. I've heard Bob speak. I've not heard Jim speak, but I've heard Bob speak a couple of times. He's really good. Just talk about those guys and your relationship with them.
Bob Davis is the General Secretary of the Guthrie Scottish Rite Valley. He's the 33rd Grand Cross, and again, very well respected in the Masonic community. And he is just kind of, for me, the wise mentor, the wise old man that you encounter on, sorry, Bob, I'm not that old, but the wise old man archetype on the hero's journey. Somebody that you can meet and puts you at ease. It doesn't matter, personal problem, spiritual problem, you can go talk to him, and he puts you at ease, and he's just a font of wisdom. And Jim Tressner was actually kind of Bob's mentor in the beginning as well. And I always joke that Tressner's kind of Albert Pike reincarnated. That just his depth of spiritual knowledge and wisdom is just vast. And both of those guys, again, they're both members of the Guthrie Valley, and they're just treasures for us. And that's one of the things, one of the aspects that makes Guthrie unique is you can go to one of our reunions and you have these two just monoliths of knowledge for most people right there and easily accessible. You can go down the cigar room and have a cigar with Bob, or Jim's probably going to be down there puffing away on his pipe. And, you can talk about anything as deep as you want to go with those guys.
So let's talk about this Guthrie Scottish Rite. There's a lot of Scottish Rite valleys in the United States, a ton of them. I mean, y'all are just another valley, right?
We're spoiled. Most people will agree that Guthrie is a very unique experience. To begin with, our temple, part of the temple was actually the first capital of Oklahoma, what we now use as dorm rooms. But we also built this magnificent structure that it's beautiful and so ornate. And when you walk down the hallways, just even in the tile, the different symbolism of Freemasonry and geometry and Kabbalah symbolism, it's just amazing. So just the building itself is amazing. But again, you have Bob and you have Jim, who are easily accessible. They help with educational programs. And Guthrie, as far as I know, is the only valley that does all 29 Scottish Rite degrees once a year. In the fall, we do quite a few, not all 29, but every spring, usually the first or second week in April, we do all 29 degrees. So it's really become kind of a destination for Masons all over the United States and even the world who want to come and see all 29 degrees because most valleys don't do 29 degrees. Some of them don't even get close to 29, 10, 15, maybe 5 or 6 is all a valley does because that's all they can do. And so a lot of these Masons, they've been members, 20, 30, 40, 50 years who say, look, I've been a 32nd, a KCCH, or a 33rd, but I've never even seen all the degrees. And so they come to Guthrie to see all 29 degrees in one really packed full weekend. Well, it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but it's a very unique experience.
So it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I guess every reunion you have people flying in from out of state to see it.
Yeah, and we actually quite a few candidates from out of state now. I think at our last reunion we had 10 or 12 from out of state. In fact, we had one family from North Carolina that was the dad and his 3 sons, and we had a member who had been Mason for 20 or 30 years from Louisiana that had always said he wanted to take the Scottish Rite degrees, but he refused to take it unless he could take all 29 degrees. So by golly, he finally went to Guthrie so he could see all 29 degrees and really call himself a 32nd degree Mason. That's what he said.
That's really good. So we've talked about the building a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so all of your candidates stay in the building.
It's an option. You don't have to. That is one of the things that makes Guthrie unique. In the old Capitol building, what used to be the offices for the senators and House of Representatives are now dorm rooms. It's kind of a hostel style where you'll have a room that might have anywhere from 2 to 12 beds, depending on the size of the room. And then they have bathrooms kind of on each end of the building for each floor that you can use. And candidates stay free. Members, I want to say it's $10 a night, so it's dirt cheap. But that's kind of part of the Guthrie experience, is what I always tell everybody. That look, if you're going to come to Guthrie for the first time, stay at the temple. It's not 5-star accommodations. It's probably not even 1-star accommodations. I mean, you'll get a bed, some linens, and you're sharing a bathroom with 20 of your closest friends. But that's part of really the experience on being there, because the cigar lounge is going to be open till midnight, and you'll kind of see people wandering around the temple. It's really hard to describe the scale and beauty of the temple because it's huge, and we have artisan rooms that might be 1,500 to 2,000 square foot rooms that each have a theme. We have one that's called the Crystal Room, and it's modeled after basically Versailles. So you have mirrors along the wall, everything's gold leafed. You have a baby grand piano that was purposely built by Wurlitzer when the temple was built for that room. and we'll have guys that will come in and literally put on, Justin Glosson from Texas comes to mind, who helps with the organ during the degrees. He'll put on mini concerts. He has a master's degree in music composition, and he'll you walk by at 1 a.m. and he's playing Mozart and Beethoven in the room, and you have these big couches and everybody's sitting around kind of salon style, and you're discussing philosophy and masonry and light. And Bob will be until Sharon, his wife, tells him to come home. He'll be up there holding court. And you have the the Assyrian room, which is modeled after the Assyrian court, like royal court. And so you have these big chairs you sink down into. You have the Assyrian lion motif all the way around. The lights look like giant blazing fire pots. So again, you kind of sit around and discuss. We have the blue room, which is modeled after kind of the ideal lodge, with a horned altar in the middle after the New Testament altar. And we have a library that is... I want to say Edwardian, but maybe that's not the right time period, but all English oak, hand carved. We have original volumes from Poe and Mark Twain, and we have a really decent esoteric section. And so anyway, the temple is your playground. You can stay there, and that's why you really want to stay there, because we lock the doors at midnight. But if you're staying at the temple, you can still walk around and play pool down in the billiard room and just enjoy the temple. It's your playground. So that's a very unique experience. And we always tell the candidates, make sure you get some sleep, because the candidates for 29 degrees in 3 days is kind of a cattle call. But for the members that don't necessarily have to go to all 29 degrees, you can definitely use it as your playground for the weekend.
We're going, Brown.
I would love it.
We're going.
I would love it.
It's on our list. You going to host us when we come?
I will absolutely host you.
Okay, so in addition to doing the degrees, you guys have an extensive education program you were telling me about. A lot of the valleys, our valley, some of the degrees we communicate, the ones that we don't, actually do. So we talk about them in depth, not only read through the degree itself, but we talk about it. But you guys have something much more extensive than all that, right?
Yeah, it's kind
and
of...
you have member training also, you said.
Yeah, it's kind of sometimes literally a three-ring circus, because we have the candidate education program. So as a candidate of the Guthrie Valley, you're not just going to sit down and watch 29 degrees. We're going to immerse you in education as well. You're going to have breakout sessions, talks from Bob, Jim, and the other members of the education committee, myself, and Chuck Dunning, Kevin Main, Clyde Schofield. And so we'll talk to the candidates. So you have that one ring of the three-ring circus, and then you have the second ring, which is member education. So if you're already a member, not necessarily of Guthrie, but if you're a member of the Scottish Rite, we have probably every other hour, we'll have hour-long education courses that are sessions, and different members of the education committee will teach a course. So during the day, you might have 4 or 5 opportunities for member education. Well, then the third ring is put on by a new group in the Valley called the Academy of Reflection, and that is the contemplative arm of it. So while we have candidate education going on, member education going on, we also have a contemplative ring that has meditation sessions during the reunion, as well as just different contemplative practice sessions.
I'm fascinated by this. Tell us all about it.
The Academy of Reflection is, I think, I can't remember if it's 2 years old or 3 years old. It started in Guthrie. Bob Davis and Chuck Dunning kind of are the brainchildren behind it. Chuck Dunning has done an amazing job of developing a course. Basically what the Academy of Reflection does, I mean, there's lots of, and most people on the transformational path will realize this, there's lots of correspondence courses and other groups you can become a part of. CERCES, BOTA, Fraternity of the Hidden Light, FLO, and while there's different various Golden Dawn offshoots as well. There's even Kabbalistic courses that you can take. Those are great. They're wonderful to have a background knowledge of different esoteric sciences, but they're not Masonic. And so what a lot of guys do is, you're an active Freemason, you're part of all these other groups, and you try to make the connections as you can. What the Academy of Reflection does is provide a course dedicated to more of the esoteric, allegory and symbolism part of the fraternity, and firmly root it strictly in Freemasonry. The first coursework, basically takes somebody who's maybe not done any kind of meditation at all, and it walks them through stuff like simple breath meditate or simple silent sitting, breath meditations, simple visualizations, and everything used comes from the ritual. A working tool, sections of ritual, and it just basically works from there. From the Blue Lodge all the way through the different Scottish Rite teachings. And so I think that is just a fabulous, fabulous system. We're already Guthrie is going to be the mother, I guess, academy, and the Supreme Council has given the blessing that we can charter other valleys as well. So there's one right now, I believe, in Orange County that's going to be starting within the next year, and I think there's also another one in California that should be starting within a year or so as well.
So if another valley wants to start one, what would they do?
You have to come to Guthrie. Well, I don't know if you have to come to Guthrie or if you could go to another chartered academy,
which means California.
Exactly, but most people have come to Guthrie, and you have to make a number of meditations. Usually it takes you 2 reunions to do so. We have a sign-in sheet, so you put your name down. So after you've attended 4 or 5 meditation sessions, which is, again, easily doable in 2 reunions, you can become a member of the academy. After you become a member, then you can start the process of, hey, we want to start our own academy. There's some requirements for the superintendent. The superintendent has to be somebody who has kind of a spiritual background, because he's going to be the head of the academy, for the new valley. So there's some requirements there, but it's very doable, and we'd love to see it grow. And the academy, we have our own functions beyond just the reunions as well. One of the neatest functions we have is every January, usually the first or second weekend in January, we have a silent meditation retreat in Guthrie. So that's kind of new for most Masons, because we love to talk and interact with one another. But you basically have this giant multi-100,000 square foot.
Hey, get out.
You have this huge temple, and you might have 5, 6, 10 people show up for a silent meditation retreat, and that's all you're doing all weekend. You have the run of the temple by yourself, and we have different meditation courses and contemplative practices that weekend. And so that's kind of a monastic retreat almost within the Masonic context, and it's very, very, very interesting.
I'm thrilled at this. I'm really excited that Masonry is going to offer something like this. I think it's the way that we're headed.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I sure hope somebody from Greensboro Valley is willing to go do that and start one here. Wouldn't it be cool to be the first one on the East Coast, Brown?
Oh, yes, it would.
Love it. All right, so Guthrie, pretty much where we're going to leave Guthrie is incredibly awesome sauce, and everybody ought to go.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you. And again, we have quite a out-of-state and even international contingent now that comes, especially in the spring. The fall reunion, I don't remember, 18 degrees. I mean, we still do a lot of degrees in the fall, but if you're going to make one, is what I always tell everybody, if you're going to come in the spring. But it is becoming very much a destination course or a destination spot for Masonry. So make your plans early, and especially if you want to stay at the temple. I mean, there's only a limited number of rooms, so you want to kind of let us know you're coming so we get you a spot.
Cool. We're getting close to the end here, but you and I have referenced Joseph Campbell a lot of times in this last hour, and we've used a lot of little phrases that he uses and everything. So everybody that knows Campbell knows exactly what we're talking about. But just I love Joseph Campbell so much. For anybody that does not know who we're talking about, Joseph Campbell was a professor that, I guess, of comparative religion. Is that what he did?
Mythology and comparative religion.
So somewhere in the Northeast. But you can, if you YouTube him, you can find lots of lectures of his on the internet. They're wonderful. He wrote a book called The Hero's Journey, which is it's in the top 10 list of books that I recommend to new Freemasons. And there's a foundation. Tell us a little bit about Campbell and the whole idea of the hero's journey.
Campbell, again, was an American mythologist who sometimes when you read somebody or listen to them, it's almost like you find a kindred spirit. And with Campbell, I really kind of found mine, because my whole philosophy has always been find the ties that unite stuff. That's what I did with religion. In my professional life, I'm an attorney, and that's something that I even take to my professional life is big picture. Okay, you can get drowned in the nuances of stuff, but take a step back. What's the big picture of things? So what Campbell did, he started studying all these different myths and religions, and he found that no matter where you go in the world, there's a common theme that runs through all these religions and myths of the world, and it's the hero's journey. The hero starts out in the ordinary world. He might be a little bit odd. People might think he's a little weird, but he's just an ordinary guy. But then there's the call that happens that says, no, you need to embark on this special journey. And it's in every movie, every superhero movie and story that you can really think of. The Hobbit, where you have Bilbo or Frodo's happy in the Shire. Here comes Gandalf and says, no, you have this adventure. And you go through the various stages of refusal of the call, where the hero says, no, I don't really want to do this. But he ends up going on the journey. And while the journey in story form makes for a good story, really it's about your own personal journey.
Right.
Where you have to go outside of yourself and undertake this journey of transformation. And there's trials, there's tribulations, you have friends that turn into enemies, and various encounters. And then there's the return, where you have to come back to the world. And it's a beautiful analogy for Freemasonry. And, when I started making that connection, it just kind of blew my mind, because that's the story of the Masonic fraternity. I mean, you have somebody who's a profane and uninitiated who receives the call for whatever reason or however to join the fraternity. And then you have the crossing of the first threshold at the door of the preparation room, and you go through that whole journey. Then you have the staircase, or the second section of fellowcraft degree, staircase and middle chamber, where you receive the boon of knowledge. And then you have the whole second section of the Master Mason journey, where the magical flight, rescue from without, the resurrection, and the return to the world. And that really is the personal journey. When you start off, my own journey of looking at my religious beliefs, and you start coming around, kind of dark night of the soul, dwell on the threshold. This is all, nothing to believe in. Not necessarily, I don't think I ever reached the point of being an atheist, but jaded and bitter maybe. And then, you meet mentors and friends, and, the fraternity's been a huge help. And then you kind of start coming back around to now you got to go back out into the world and make the world a better place. And the Scottish Rite system really hits that home. I mean, the lectures in the 32nd degree, hit that hard, that, you've made this journey, but you have to make the world a better place as well. Right. Because you can be a good person, but you can't be a hermit off in the woods, because that doesn't do the world any good. You right. have to help others and be a light unto the world. Be a soldier of light, as they say in the Scottish Rite.
Right. Yes, wonderful stuff. You a Wilmshurst guy?
Yes.
I love Wilmshurst. Well, I believe we're pretty close to our hour. I think we're going. I could talk to you for 2 or 3 more hours, but we have stuff to do today. Next time you come back to North Carolina, we'll pick this up where we left off here, and if we weren't edgy enough today, we'll get even more edgy next time.
That's right.
Run us out of here, Brown.
Do it.
Thank you for coming, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.